Isn't it? You like free beer, you start there, okay.
Councilor Warner, would you give a blessing, please?
Yes, sir. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, Lord. We thank you for this time of fellowship, Lord. We ask that you bless this meeting, bless those that are here, Lord, and just help us be mindful of those that are afflicted outside, Lord, and be mindful of their every need. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Yeah. Roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Reggie Gordon.
Here.
Joe Smith.
Yes.
Bill England.
Honey.
Hugh Austin.
Here.
Charlie Dozer.
Here.
Joe Burris. Sean Crittenden.
Honey.
Mike Dobbins.
Here.
Wanda Hatfield. Dick Blake. Mike Shambaugh.
Here.
Mary Bakershaw. Ani. Denise Taylor. Here. Victoria Vesquez. David Walkinsticks. Brian Warner.
Amen.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes from November the 13th.
Make a motion to be approved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Reports, management resources. David's not here? Oh, he's not gonna be here? Okay. Okay. Real estate services. Ginger Brown.
Yeah, Ginger's not here today, but I'll try to field your questions.
All right. Anybody have any questions?
I think you're doing a great job. I have one after
Yes.
the meeting.
Okay, thank you. I'll get with you after the meeting.
Any other questions for Joel?
Rick,
Yes.
does anybody here work closely with natural resources?
On occasion, some of us.
Okay. Well, I'll try to ask this question here. But, got a few, this time of year, requests for some firewood. And in the past, I've been able to call and get that delivered through natural resources. And the last two times, and I know David's just stepped into a job and he's doing what he can, but they're telling me they can't use the equipment to haul wood. Even, you know, I've talked to some guys and they had some time to do it, but they were just told they couldn't do it. And I can't think of a better use for some of that equipment than getting the elders some firewood so they can stay warm. So I'd like to know what may be going on in some of those instances. I got a truck and I don't care to haul it, but I couldn't believe that we couldn't get that done. Jane
Todd?
Can I go ahead and try to answer that?
Yes.
I don't know all the details. I'm working with David, but David's trying to make sure that he does things correctly, contingent upon the funding source. If those gentlemen that are paid out of the Natural Resources Department, their funding source wouldn't actually allow them to deliver that to an individual's home. We did find a resource inside Human Services with the Light Heap, and they can do that. I know at the last instance that we had, they were busy actually delivering wood stoves and other things and couldn't get them worked in a quick enough
So
time
it's
frame.
a budget problem?
Yeah, it's
Now
it's not
Now
necessarily.
we get a stack of books on that budget, and I'm gonna venture to say there's some things in there not quite as important as, you know, someone staying warm. So if the budget, if you visit with Dave or whoever you need to, if that's the case, there ain't a lot of things I can guarantee, but I believe everybody here would throw in a little gas money to deliver something like that. But
I'll talk to David a little bit more. We've been brainstorming on trying to figure out how to come up with a better long-term solution. And it's because they're federal funds and the way they're being used, we need to make sure that the appropriate staff utilize the appropriate budget to deliver that wood. And I'll make a commitment to you that I'm going to work with David to come up with a better long-term.
let me repeat, I'm not pointing fingers at
Oh,
anybody.
yeah.
Dave, he answers that phone, and it's out of his hands, but thank you for doing that, and I look forward to it. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions for Joel? Yes.
In the, says future plans, new initiatives, do you know anything about, it says improvements at Warner and Ross Road properties? Do you have any idea what that is?
I do not. I mean, I know they've always had plans for something at Ross Road and Warner, but as far as exactly what it is, I couldn't answer. But I can find out and sure enough get back with you.
Okay, great, thanks. Thank you.
Charlie?
Joel, I may have asked Ginger this question the last time. On here again, it's got 3 restriction removal applications have been submitted and are awaiting approval from the BIA. And you may or may not know why they're asking for the removals of them, but do you?
The every removal that comes in is asked for by the family. I mean, it's someone that wants to either mortgage the property or to get a house built. You know, that would be the reason, you know, why they would want to do it. Those 3 particular ones, I mean, I could just almost guarantee you it was because they were trying to either get a mortgage, sell it, or get a home built. I mean, that's the only reasons why they would do it.
Yeah, and I guess that really bothers me because I watch that or look at it every month, but there are procedures where you can mortgage restricted land.
Yes, sir, there is.
And I didn't know that for a long time until, I studied up on it. So there are some alternatives to mortgaging restricted land, but a lot of time there's a wait period. And that may be the case in some of this areas here, but I just hate to see,
Hate to see it
well, we're
lost.
doing what the participant wants. But,
Right.
I just hope that we're telling them, hey, you can mortgage this even if it's restricted and stuff like that.
They are counseled. There's actually a form that they have to sign out, and there's some questions that we ask them. And I mean, I know it says on there twice, do you really want to do this? I mean, and, once a person has their mind made up, it's kind of,
Okay, well, I just want to make sure we're counseled. Thank you. Thanks, sir.
Any other questions for Joel?
Joel, on that mortgage and restrict the land, that has to be approved by the
Bureau.
Bureau of Indian Affairs?
yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Joel. Done a good job.
All right, thank you.
Environmental programs, Tom Elkins.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. I'm pretty sure you have our report. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. I don't know if there's anything specifically that I would elaborate on right now, but
Any
I
questions
think
for Tom?
everybody's staying pretty busy.
I got one, I've asked this before. It's on the landfill, I know you don't do the inspection cycle, or do you do the inspection?
I do, absolutely.
How's the landfill looking?
There are always challenges out there. They do a quarterly monitoring report. Now, that's a third party that does that. We don't do it, the landfill doesn't do it. They contract to have that done. They really only have to have that done twice by regulation, but they do it 4 times. That's been in their permit for quite a while. And they've discussed taking that out because it's quite an expense for them. But, we've talked and people have asked different times, well, have they ever had this or ever had that? They really haven't. And I can't say that they won't, but to date, we haven't. They actually do quite a bit more monitoring than what is required.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah.
On our conversation the other day, since the tornadoes, has increased that much out at the landfill?
They've taken some debris out there, not a whole lot. They've always taken some storm debris, because every now and again there's, even if it isn't a major tornado or something like that, there's always some sort of storm debris, and they take that.
No big load of.
Not a whole lot, no, sir.
Any other questions? Thank you, Tom.
Absolutely.
Done good.
Everybody have a Merry Christmas.
Okay. Secretary of Natural Resources, Sarah Hill.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here for the Tribal Council. I wasn't here last month, so I have quite a few things. I know you're kind of behind schedule. I'll try to sort of go quickly and hit the high points on it. Of course, all of you heard, because we made a big deal about it, we got the last of the highly contaminated raffinate material out of Gore, Oklahoma, which was a huge relief and years of hard work from a lot of different people, including my staff, which are here. Chad Harsha worked on that more hours than I could count. Worked really hard on that to make sure that all of the phone calls and all the legal work that had to be done got done, and I can't speak highly enough of his work on that. And of course, everything we do, we couldn't do nearly as well if we didn't have Julie Justice backing us up and making sure that all the other things that were happening weren't slipping through the cracks. So I can't speak highly enough of the good work that they do. We're very fortunate to have them. On our grant update, I know that you all are aware that we got a grant to buy electric buses and to do electric vehicle infrastructure installation in the 14 counties. The Volkswagen issues have been resolved now, so we know how much money we'll be getting under, we have an idea of how much money we'll be getting under the Volkswagen initiative. So we're working to put our money together to do the most strategic investment in electric vehicle infrastructure that we can make in the 14 counties. Which is important, although you don't maybe see a ton of electric vehicles now. I think everyone agrees that's the future. And for Northeast Oklahoma and the Cherokee Nation to be ready for the future, we need to be making strategic investments in infrastructure now, so that we're not left behind like Oklahoma sometimes is as technology changes. So we're in the forefront of that. So we're continuing to work on that, and also working strategically with CMB so that we're using our property and our investments as wisely as we can. In environmental programs, starting in January, environmental programs will be offering free lead-based paint inspections for any Cherokee Nation citizen residing in a home in the 14 counties that resides in a home that meets the following conditions. The unit was built before 1978, and children 6 years old or younger reside in that house. So that's an expansion of what things that we've done before. They're also available to do testing for daycare, schools, or other facilities where children spend a lot of time. So lead continues to be a major hazard for young children. If you don't know you have a problem, you don't know how to address it. So this is an attempt by environmental programs to increase the reach for people that have concerns about homes, older homes that they're living in, and young children that they have there, because it's still such a hazard in our environment, especially for young children. It could really be very detrimental to them. I attended a meeting yesterday. I and Chad Harsha both attended in Kansas, Oklahoma. Kent Wilkins from the Oklahoma Water Resources Board was there to talk to them about well construction and some of the well issues that they've seen, trying to help people keep their water supply as safe as they can in situations where they may be facing a lot of new construction of poultry barns in their area. And there was lots of talk again about this is the problem and what the Oklahoma legislative session is going to look like. There were proposed rules by ODAF, and I've got copies here of the comment that I submitted on behalf of my office and on behalf of the Environmental Protection Commission. They had proposed 1/4 mile setback so that a poultry house cannot be built within a 1/4 mile of any occupied residence. Those were proposed by ODAF, and then, but the Board of Agriculture failed to approve them. So we're still stuck in this limbo where there are no rules in Oklahoma. I understand that there's been some commitments made to some of the Board of Agriculture people that they're going to take this issue up in the Oklahoma legislature. I have to say that, speaking for myself, that it's hard to have a lot of confidence in their ability to address difficult political situations like this, but I'm hopeful that maybe there will be some political will to do that. They also extended the moratorium until May 31st. So if they don't act, there's a clock now ticking on the moratorium, so that increases my concern about it. We'll have a new Secretary of Agsman appointed, Blaine Arthur, by incoming Governor Stitt. And so if she is confirmed, that will give us a new person to deal with. And so I'll continue to work hard with Oklahoma and all the different players involved and the citizens to try to come up with a better way to protect our communities. That continues to be a problem. New steady progress is being made on the new cell at the landfill. That's probably the most urgent need right now is airspace. And so, but that construction is going on. We're very happy about that. In the administration support, Pat Gwynn's unit, he specifically wanted me to let you guys know that he thinned out the cane at the native plant garden. It needed to be thinned out so that it would grow better. He had 5,000 stalks of river cane collected. He's given nearly all of them away. So there was a lot of interest in that. So he was pleased to be able to use something that we were thinning out for biological necessity reasons, was able to be used by our citizens. And then the Keep Siegel money has finally been transferred to the trust. There's about $270 million The trust is continuing to meet. Janie Hipp has been hired as the CEO for the trust, and they're interviewing CFOs and CIOs right now. None of this money can go to an individual. It's all earmarked to go to organizations, but they haven't taken, they're still in the process of creating their rules for how they're going to do that. And also the seed bank will open February 1st. So if you have people that are interested, we should have a good stock of seeds this year because the Native Plant Garden did so well. So if you have citizens that are interested in that, they need to be thinking about signing onto the website and getting their registration. The Fish and Wildlife Department, we've got our licenses are going out in the mail, so that's all in progress. They're printing them right now, and they're just hitting the mail in batches, so they'll kind of just be a patchwork. People will get them, but they need to be checking their mailboxes between now and the first of the year. If they don't get it in by the middle of January, they need to be calling Dale Glory to change their address, update their information. And he's attended, you've probably all seen him, Dale Glory gets all over the 14 counties. He's been at a lot of community meetings, so hopefully your citizens had a chance to talk to him and ask him any questions they might have. So that's the high points, I think, of what's been going on.
Any questions for
I
Sarah?
have a comment.
Yes.
There was he mentioned early about USDA funds when we were talking about damages. I think Councilor Critton and them were talking about damages in their area, Walking Stick and Shambo. And they were talking about grant money that might be available. If it's USDA funds, and I said, you weren't here, I said, and I was thinking, I guess that Sarah would probably know where that might be.
You know, I do know there's been, I don't think that USDA, the local offices have been approved yet for any of that. I do know they're requesting it, but I don't think that they've received approval from whatever various overlords have to approve those kinds of things yet.
Okay.
But I have been keeping an eye on it, and I will know pretty quickly as soon as they've made a decision on it. I'll be sure to report that back to the council, because I
Okay,
know that's
all right. Thank you, Mr.
an
Chair.
issue.
Mr. Shaw.
Sarah, I know that we had this landfill, and this happened long before I was on this council, but I know you're all testing it and you monitor around the landfill. But, you know, we just got rid of this toxic dump, for lack of a better word to call it. You know, I personally don't like us having a landfill, and I don't know how many of these counselors here do. How much revenue does that generate into the tribe?
It's not a revenue generator at all.
Please explain to me why we have this landfill.
Sure. So the landfill has been open for many years. It was opened in the 80s. I think in the Mankiller administration, it was initially opened. It has been operated and is the main municipal landfill in Adair County. It's the only one in the county, and it's taken municipal trash there. It has not ever really been a revenue generator. It's always been operated more as a community service because, you know, it was needed in that community, or it was believed to be needed at that time. The world really changed from 1980 to today. Subtitle D was passed, so there were new rules and regulations that were passed. And the idea of Subtitle D was to sort of eliminate smaller landfills like ours, to make them, because you had a lot more restrictions that you had to meet. But once you decided to keep it open, then you had to live with those restrictions, the new rules and regulations on landfills. And so the landfill's been operating in this more rigorous enforcement universe since Subtitle D has passed, which did not help its profitability. And so the long-term goal for the landfill, for all landfills, is closure. They open and eventually you have to close them. And obviously, the long-term goal for this landfill is closure as well. You can't just shut the gates on a landfill and just say, we're done with this. We're tired of being a landfill. We don't want it anymore. You have to follow a lot of rules and procedures for closing down a landfill. There are a lot of old cells of the landfill that have to be properly closed before the landfill can be closed. And so the plan right now is to have sort of a controlled shutdown of the landfill. We're going to have to try to find a way to help Adair County plan for its solid waste, because there's already terrible problems in Adair County with people just dumping trash on the side of the road. Not having a landfill that's accessible and affordable, a lot of people feel like it's going to exacerbate that problem. So we need to be sure that we work with Adair County to help them come up with a transfer station or other plans to help them deal with solid waste, so we don't just lock the doors and create a bigger crisis than we've got. We have to be sure that we're doing it in a way that has a lot of regulatory integrity, that we're following all the rules, and that everything is closed down properly the way that it should be. But to do that, we have to also keep the doors open because there's a lot of work that has to be done between now and that end point. So what we've been doing is planning a long-term closure plan for the landfill, which it had a closure plan, but it didn't really have one that was tailored to the landfill's footprint today. So updating that, but all of that, you have to have a new cell in place because you have to keep the landfill open if you don't want to immediately do all of the millions of dollars of work that have to be done. So we have to keep it open over this long-term shutdown period. So that's where we're at with it right now. I don't think anybody feels like running the landfill is a profitable enterprise for the tribe, but it's sort of one of the necessary evils of every community and one that we're just having to deal with. But long-term shutdown of the landfill is my goal.
Okay, can you give us a projection on a time?
I think it's hard to say right now what that's going to look like until we have the new landfill cell opened and we know what that footprint of that is going to be. There's no way within probably 5 years that it could be shut down. I think it's a 5 to 10 year period of shutdown for that to be completely closed. Now we can close it in stages. We can close the older cells first and have those closed off. And so as we're going through time here over the next 5 to 10 years, we're closing down these older cells and getting cover on them. And then the last cell you close is the last one you had open. Then you can lock the doors and be done with it. But it's gonna be a long-term process. I wish that there were a shortcut solution that we could say, okay, when we can get this done in a couple of years and we'll have everything complete and it's affordable and the community will be okay. I don't think that's feasible, and I would hate to tell you that it was.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
I will say this, we had this discussion 25 years ago about the landfill. How do we close it? Why did we even open it? When there's some really natural springs right underneath it called Candymeat Springs where people used to go and get water. I doubt if they can do that now. Runs into Low Water Bridge, where runs into Bradley Ford, Lee's Creek. But Secretary Hill is the only person that has come to this council in the past 25 years that I can remember that had a plan for closure. No one else ever talked about closure. She's the only one that's ever come to us and said, there is a plan for closure, but it's going to take 5 years, 10 years. So we have made some progress.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
There, I've heard different conversations about recycling. Why haven't we looked into that more?
Recycling in terms of specific.
There's all, as far as the trash being taken there and all the recycled, newspapers, aluminum, just all the things you can recycle.
Right. Like recycling at the landfill.
Right, and I
Okay.
sit in on one of the, I think excuse me. Oh, another tribe was doing that, recycling, and they had looked like a pretty successful thing going. Excuse me. But it's the obvious thing to talk about is recycling at a dump site.
Right.
So what's the serious conversation that's been had over the years?
So the,
That's not, I mean, I care about that place, but that's not what's choking me up. I don't know what
I think I take your question. I understand your question now. So we have talked about it. So there are some small regulatory hurdles, and then there's some larger operational hurdles. I don't think it's impossible or anything. I think it could be a good component of it. The small regulatory hurdle is we'd have to amend the permit to permit it, because right now trash comes into the landfill, it goes into the landfill. That's the permitted process. That's what it's designed for. There's not a place for there to be a lot of there's not a place for trash to just hang out while it's being sorted, but that's a minor issue that we could handle. The larger operational issue is that doing recycling is going to take manpower, and it's going to take funding to get the equipment and the things that you need to do a good job recycling. So it takes investment, and that's something that we've talked about for sure. But right now, when we have other operational challenges in terms of getting the airspace constructed, it's not something that we have devoted the manpower or the resources to at this time. But it's something that we're discussing.
I haven't either, but it would, take myself and others to come up with come up with a plan and lay something out, and it's definitely something that everyone wouldn't be opposed to,
Yeah,
I'm sure.
and we've talked to, and Jamie Clinton, who's the landfill manager, specifically has looked at different ways that would make sense to do that. And he and I have talked about putting that, but right now, all of our effort and all of our funding has been in the new cell construction because nothing else could happen until we had that problem resolved. Once that new landfill cell is completed, then we should have a lot more, we'll have the capacity to sort of put our energy into a new venture. But right now, we're really focused on that new cell construction. But I take your point that it's important, and of course, recycling is something that I obviously do think is important. So I don't disagree with that
It
at
would
all.
go hand in hand with our electric vehicles and other things we're.
I like all that hippie stuff. Yeah, I'm all
I
for it.
got a couple more things here. Now, the electric buses and cars,
Mm-hmm.
you said you were having conversations about kind of what to do with those, or which direction you were going?
Well, we received grant funding to buy 2 electric buses and to put in 4 electric charging stations to support those buses. And we also have money that's coming from the Volkswagen settlement that we can use for more heavy-duty, like school bus replacement. Heavy-duty diesel vehicles can be replaced with electric vehicles. I mean, you can also use that money to build infrastructure to support that. So what we're wanting to do, though, we don't want to build, so we know that one of our transit buses and one of our schools is in Tahlequah. We don't want to build 2 charging stations, together. We want to be strategic about how we do that. So those have been the discussions. Does it make sense to put one in Tahlequah and then maybe put one in Muskogee so that if the girls go play a basketball game in Muskogee, there will be charging infrastructure and they could take the electric bus. And so trying to be strategic about where we place it and be sure that we're not putting it in a place where there's not a lot of traffic that it couldn't be used by anyone else. So if you don't put one in maybe Holbert, Muskogee would be a better site because it sees more traffic. That kind of thinking is what we're talking about.
The lead-based paint, now is that a grant or is that something that Cherokee Nation's doing?
That's something that I think we're utilizing EPA funding and tribal council funding to do the lead-based paint testing. So we have lead-based paint funding we receive from EPA, and I think they are also using some tribal council funding available to help supplement that. It's kind of a pilot project at this point to see what kind of interest there is in it. One thing it doesn't fund is it doesn't fund remediation. So if you have a lead-based paint problem, you're going to have to work on finding a solution to
My next
that.
question is, are you working hand in hand with the housing authority, or is there any, because I know there's a lot of, we just lead-based paint, mold, and we've got those problems, and everybody agrees they're bad, but there's lots and lots of folks that need, like what you said, is needing something after they discover they have it. Is any funding for that?
Well, we do not have funding available for that right now. Whether the housing authority, now if they're a housing authority participant, then it could be the housing authority could assist them with that. But even if you're not, even if you are not NAHASDA eligible, but you live in a house where you've got small children and it's an older house and you're not sure about it, you would have the capacity to pay for remediation yourself, but you don't know how to get started. You don't know how to get it tested. That's where I think we're hoping this program can step in. And also schools and daycares that may not be sure where to start. Like, is this something we should be concerned about? Is this an issue? I think most parents would rather know than not know. Because even if you don't have the money to remediate it, if you know you have a problem, you can be more conscientious about it. You can make sure your child's blood is being regularly tested. I mean, I think any parent would rather know than not know that there's some hazard out there to your child that you need to deal with.
Is it going to be an outside source that tests for it, or because I was looking a few years ago at the housing employees.
Right.
There were lots and lots of lead-based paint supervisors and people that were qualified to do that. Are we going to be using some of those, or is it going to be an outside source that does that?
And I'm sure that the samples are probably taken by staff, Cherokee Nation staff, because we have our own lead treatment estate for lead-based paint at Cherokee Nation. So I'm sure our staff will probably do the collection. Probably an outside lab will actually do the actual test, because I don't know that we have, I'm not certain about that. I'd have to double check. I'm not sure about the lab itself. I would suspect that gets sent out to a third party.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Wanda?
Would you be open to dialogue to begin a recycle service for the landfill? Or would that be with your office, or would that be with some other department?
That would be with my office for sure.
And would you be interested?
Always. I'd be happy to talk about that.
Thank you.
Carly?
Sarah, at the landfill, and this brings up an interesting conversation, are we not recycling anything at all? I mean, we're not putting refrigerators and steel and stoves in a landfill, are we?
So, this would be a good question for maybe Tom more than
Or
me.
even-
I think there maybe is some minimal recycling of some of those things.
Absolutely. They try to pull steel and things like that that are easily to recycle. They can't take refrigerators unless they've had the Freon removed and it been done so by a qualified individual. After that's done, yeah, they can take white goods like that, and they do.
Oh, and we do, that was my
Absolutely.
question.
They don't recycle everything to the extent that they possibly could, but that's, again, a discussion.
The other thing is like, I noticed, and the reason I say this, at Jay, they have a place where we can go dump our stuff. We take a battery up there, and I see like 10 or 15 sitting there. And I see a big bin that's got all steel, like refrigerators, stoves, whatever they can dump. And then, in the other one, they have mattresses, and chairs and stuff like that. So I'm hoping we're doing that out there.
I mean,
It's a pretty good source of income up there. I'm surprised that they sell that steel once it comes in there.
yeah, I mean, I know that the low-hanging fruit type things, that they will grab them out and recycle them. But in terms of like going through load by load, the municipal trash that comes in and searching it with a big magnet for recyclables the way landfills do, we don't do that.
And the way they do it at Jay, they just automatically bring them in separately. People have been trained enough to know that you can't put garbage with your stove and dump it in your landfill.
I mean, a good recycling program is great for any community, but they're not cheap to run. They're expensive to operate, and you really have to have, the community has to be the people that kind of say, this is what we want, because if you just bring a recycling bin out to someone and it's not something the community is educated about and invested in, it just becomes another trash bin, and then it's not a useful program. So a lot of it has got to be like the community has to really be ready and educated and to kind of be demanding those services. It's hard to impose on a community.
Thanks, sir.
Any other questions? Yes, CEO.
Like I told you the other day, if you ever get tired of this and want to run for politics, you can move to Gore or Weber, be mayor or state rep or something. I received,
It's good to have choices.
after the meeting was over, I received probably 8 or 9 phone calls a day for 2 or 3 weeks, still receiving a few calls. People are just so happy they can't believe all the hours you spent doing that is well worth it. And I had 2 calls this morning about that, so
That's great to hear.
everybody's tickled to death in that area. It's worth it.
I'm tickled too. I'm really pleased at how it all went out, because there were lots of times when we weren't sure we were going to be able to get this done, and I couldn't have done it without the council. You guys absolutely supported that effort, and we could not have gotten the last mile on that if it hadn't been for you. So by all means, pat yourself on the back for that, because you made it possible. I couldn't have done any of that if it hadn't been for the council. So thank you.
Any other questions, sir? Thank you.
Thank
Done a
you.
Good job. Old business, none pending. New business, none pending. The next tentative schedule for Monday, January the 14th. Need a motion.
So moved.
Second? Have a second. Yes. All in favor?
Aye.
Out the way.